One of the fundamental principles of cinematography concerns the concept of crossing the line, also known as the 180-degree rule. In Grammar of the Film Language, Daniel Arijon refers to the concept as the triangle principle. However, all three principally refer to the conventions around filming two or more people in conversation. This concept is so important to filmmakers as a significant percentage of all of film and television involves two or more people in back and forth dialogue. It also speaks to the filmmaker's control over their subjective and objective view of the action within a scene or another character. Whilst even the most amateur filmmaker will usually be aware of the 180-degree rule, most moviegoers and audience members will only be subliminally affected by the concept in action. This is where filmmakers can use and even break the convention to subconsciously affect how the viewer's view a scene.
Who are you to know it can be done?
But let's first define the principle itself. The concept states that we draw an imaginary line between two people who interact within a scene, and we only film those actors from one side of that line. Whilst there are countless ways that actors can interact, Daniel Arijon states that all on-screen interaction of this type can be divided into four groups. Two actors who face each other, two actors side by side, one actor has their back to the other, or two actors are placed back to back. Whilst actors can move and change positions, in any one moment their setup must conform to one of these groups. In the opening scene of Michael Mann's The Insider, Lowell Berman is blindfolded and escorted to a hidden location to talk with a contact to try and arrange a secret interview. Despite the blindfold, the two actors face each other and the imaginary line is drawn between them.
Coffee?
Yeah, thank you.
We are shown both actors in close-ups and longer shots, and the spatial sense of where they are in the room and in relation to each other is established. The scene follows the conventions of the rule.
Please to explain why I should agree to interview with pro-Zionist American media.
Until the tables are both metaphorically and literally turned when the camera is moved to the other side of the line. The motivation for this can be determined from a closer reading of the script. When Lowell enters the scene, he is blindfolded. He has to be helped to a chair where he sits at a table, rather reminiscent of a chessboard. The Sheikh is in control and has the perceived power and dominance in the scene. However, when the Sheikh makes demands of Lowell that he deems unacceptable, Lowell asserts himself on the situation and the Sheikh. This prompting the shift in power, and a brief stalemate is achieved between the two.
Perhaps you prove journalism objectivity and I see the questions first. Then I decide if I grant the interview.
No, we don't do that. You've seen 60 Minutes and Mike Wallace, so you know our reputation for integrity and objectivity. You also know we are the highest rated, most respected TV magazine news show in America. So, Mr. Wallace, should we get on a plane or not?
This is where the perspective of the scene shifts. Up until now, we've consumed the scene predominantly from Lowell's perspective. We do not see the Sheikh until he talks, and as Lowell delivers his assertive speech, we dolly into him and past the Sheikh, who is left out of view. With the movement of the camera, the scene briefly shifts to a more objective point of view, as we, the audience, see these two in a brief, silent stalemate. The movement of the camera allows for the symbolic reversal of roles, without the actors moving physically, emphasizing the subtext of the script in that moment. The spatial awareness of the scene is not broken, as the jump across the line lands in a wide shot, instantly re-establishing the position of both actors in relation to the camera and each other. This allows for the break with convention for artistic effects to be achieved without confusing the audience. In contrast, this scene from Paul McGinnon's Lucky Number SLEVIN, the breaking of the 180-degree rule is used intentionally to confuse the audience. Having been knocked out in the previous scene, the rabbi, Ben Kingsley, awakes to find himself kidnapped and tied to a chair. Recognizing the room as that of his nemesis, the boss, Morgan Freeman, he assumes the boss is responsible for his capture and delivers a humbled speech with reluctant admiration conceding victory to the out-of-view boss. When the audience are shown Freeman, he appears looking from right to left, the audience and Kingsley assume he has stood behind him somewhere and facing Kingsley, quietly savouring his victory.
If I were wearing a hat, I would take it off.
But when the boss is also revealed to be tied and confined to a chair, facing away from the rabbi, now looking from left to right, the sleight of hand of the filmmakers is exposed, as both characters and the audience now realise they have been captured by somebody else.
It's like we were sold a bill of goods by the same salesman.
And the twist in the scene and the larger narrative is revealed. This break with convention is most effective as it results in the audience making an assumption that they don't know they're making. We, the audience, assume that Morgan Freeman is facing the rabbi because the convention of the 180-degree rule dictates that he should be looking in that direction. The twist and the reveal are savoured by the subtle, unnoticed crossing of the line. And it's only by our subconscious acceptance of that convention that we are fooled into thinking he's looking one way when he is looking the other. In Stanley Kubrick's A Space Odyssey 2001, Kubrick works around this concept in an even more unsettling manner by disguising who a scene belongs to. But first, let's take a look at a scene that doesn't attempt to hide its owner. Typically, dialogue scenes belong to one main character, and thus the scene is captured and covered in such a way that the audience consciously and subconsciously experience the interaction and the narrative from their point of view. We have a subjective experience of the scene from that character's viewpoint. In this scene from JOJO Rabbit, JOJO talks with a young Jewish girl, Elsa, who is hiding in his attic. We can clearly tell that the scene is JOJO's from a number of factors. We both begin and end with him in the room alone before Elsa enters and after she leaves. Shots of JOJO are framed between mid-shots and close-ups, whereas shots of Elsa are filmed at a distance, mostly long shots. The camera is always located on JOJO's side of the room. Even the tighter shots of Elsa are filmed with a long lens from JOJO's rough position. The close-up insert shots of Elsa's pendant and her drawing are filmed directly from JOJO's viewpoint. And when Elsa delivers a speech about love, we slowly dolly in on the emotional impact that this is having on JOJO.
You'll meet someone and spend your days dreaming of the moment you can hold them in your arms again. That's love. Ridiculous.
The scene, as is the film, are JOJO's. We experience this conversation and the narrative predominantly from his vantage point. Now let's return to Kubrick. In this scene, Bowman and Poole enter an airtight, soundproof pod to privately discuss the unusual behaviour of the ship's computer, HAL. We begin with what is in many ways a typical two-shot, and we assume that the line of interest is between the two shipmates. Presumably, the scene belongs to one or both of them. But importantly, we do not cut to a close-up. The frame remains still, allowing us to soak in more from the scene. We remain in a slightly objective point of view of these two characters. Shots of the performers will typically utilise a narrow depth of field. It allows filmmakers to focus the audience's attention on a specific performer or object. But Kubrick uses an incredibly deep depth of field in this shot, such that HAL, the red dot in the background, is in focus. The frame is also structured in such a way that the two crew members appear at the edges of the screen, whilst HAL is at its exact centre. Attention on HAL is further emphasised by close-ups and the direction of the actors to turn and face HAL frequently during the scene. Finally, we leave the pod and the shipmates, but not the scene. We now take HAL's direct, vignetted point of view, showing us that HAL is reading the lips of the shipmates who are plotting against him, further accentuated by the shift in diegetic sound from inside the pod to outside of it. We now realise that the line of interest is not between the shipmates, but between HAL and the shipmates. And the scene does not belong to Bowman or Poole, it belongs to HAL. We've moved from an objective view of the two crew members to a subjective view from HAL's position. HAL is slowly taking control of the situation, as he slowly takes hold of the film and its narrative. Kubrick, having initially disguised this from us, decides to reveal it to us slowly, through a host of subtle cinematography and filmmaking techniques, to match the growing sense of unease and danger that the two shipmates feel.